Hello, hello. Good to see you all. Aaron, I'll start off by saying the read you did for the past 4 hours was excellent. Very much enjoyed it. Thank you for doing that. And of course, as I mentioned in your chat, now I want to watch the movie. So I'm hoping that I can pop that on through Netflix this evening after I read. And Aranel, hello. Such a pleasure to see you in here. Thank you so much. I wonder, I switched out one of my emotes recently, and Ikakoro, hello. Good to see you, sir. I hope you are well. Aranel, Ikakoro, Aaron, can any of you see in my emotes the one that says hi with the sunglasses? If you can, then I've done it right. Yes, it's there. Sweet. Okay. You've been looking forward to this since Thursday? Bless your heart. Oh, good. I'm glad the emote works. Because I kept thinking I needed to wait to get more. But there it is. So you're very kind, Aranel, for saying that. Thank you so much. And like always, watching your streams, even though you don't have the fancy get up like some of us do, with the green screens and the images and all that, I still love it because it's so simple and down to earth. And that's excuse me, I just had dinner like half an hour ago. That's what I love about it. So thank you. Yeah, we had food delivered. So I'm streaming on a Saturday night because my son is not here. His grandparents are hanging on to him for a couple of days, which is always appreciated. And because his room is right next to mine, or the office that I'm in, I can never stream in the evening. But now I can. So I'm super happy about that for today. And I'm going to tweak the audio real quick so it's quieter for me, and then I'll bump it up so it doesn't change too much for you. Let me know if there's a distinct volume change. Give it a few seconds. I like to have that fine balance, but I feel like it's screaming in my headphones, so 'tis what it is. So yes, much to say. Gosh, where do I start? If you type in !USG, you will see a bunch of people, really cool people, that you can look up yourself. You don't even have to... so loud. Aaron, stop it. Unless you're being serious. But, which I don't think you are. So for example, since Aaron's in the chat, if you did that, you'll get Aaron's link. If you type in !Koro, you get Ikakoro's link, so on and so forth. So all of these people there, Aaron, Jeff, Koro, Witch, Pipe, Jubes, and Rogue, they are all part of the USG team, United Storytellers group, that you're seeing proudly displayed on my screen. If you haven't checked these people out, please do. Please do. They're going to be they're all part of the book club. And they're all part of USG, which is a newly formed group, a newly formed team. So it's going to be great watching it grow. Very excited to see that happen. What else? Oh, right, of course, Stream Raiders. I hope this works. Okay, so if any of you don't know what Stream Raiders is, Stream Raiders is a very fun free game that we play as a community. And if I go like this, here is the Stream Raiders game. I'm going to start a battle, and all you do is drop in troops. It's free to do, it's easy, it's simple. And let's go with, we'll go with an archer right here. So all you have to do is then start dropping in troops around me, and to do that you can just type in !SR. I hope that link takes you to the game that I just started on Stream Raiders. If it doesn't, I've set it up wrong. Let me know. But either way, I would love to see you drop some troops in. That would be amazing. You don't have to, but it's a fun little game. And in about 30 minutes, we'll start the battle, and we just wash, rinse, and repeat, and it's going to be fun. So yeah, it's just my voice, chill stream, stories I love. I miss in-person story times at my library. I bet you do. I bet you do. Julie's redeemed first place. No one else redeemed it. That's funny. Welcome in, Julie. Good to see ya. And that's what I was waiting for, the hammer curls. Alright, let me disconnect this. Hopefully my battery stays solid. Let me slide my chair out of the way a little bit. You'll try to play. It's a fun, it's easy, but most of all, let me know if you can't get in, because I only just set it up today. I made the leap. I made the jump. Whatever you want to call it. Alright, what are we doing? Hammer curls. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was a little French counting to pay homage to Les Miserables. I can't even say it. Miserlab from Aaron's reading. Thank you for redeeming that. Keeping me fit. Not like I'm not sweating as it is already, but you know, that's cool. So yes, it's good to see you all. Like I said, this is a bonus stream, and I'm very excited about it, because like I said, I don't usually get to read on an evening, so. And I've got like 4 books on my desk right now, because I've got The Giver. Come on, green screen, don't fail me now. Which, is part of the book club. I'm 2 chapters in. I'm doing about a chapter a day, so I'll be reading that later on this evening. And I've got The War of the Worlds sitting right here, which is the next book after the current one we're reading, which is right here, sitting in front of me. And then I have another book that doesn't matter because I can't read it on stream anyway. So yeah, just surrounded by the words, all the words. Aaron Smith, have you read at your local library? Have you? That's a good question. It's a very good question. Okay, I do see Koro's got a troop down, so it's working, that's a great sign. Thank you for doing that. I play Stream Raiders as a viewer all day, every day, and I love it. I've never spent a dime on there, and all my troops have leveled up over time, and it's fun. So, and actually, while I'm thinking about it, before I start reading, I'm going to jump over to Discord real quick and need to send a real quick message. As soon as I figure out where it is, here it is. Let's see. Make sure I type it in correctly. Okay, I think we're good. Bubble, hello. Good to see you, sir. Or good morning, I think. I organized a social evening at a library for a few weeks, and I would often read there. That's pretty cool. This was long before I thought about reading for work. I imagine that might have pushed you in that direction, so that's fun. I've never, of course, yeah, I forgot I don't own that ball. I forgot, or not forgot, that's not correct, not accurate. I haven't thought about doing that before. It just never even popped into my head as an option. I mean, yes, COVID is a thing and that's been going on, but people can go in the library. We go in there from time to time to get books for our son, but it never dawned on me that maybe they have readings and that I might be able to do that. Note to self, check with library about reading. That would be fun. Anyway, I think our author is here. So, with that in mind, let's get into it before we lose all of it. Yes, she is. Hi, Christy. It's good to see you. Hope your weekend's going well. Did the Hawkeyes win? Maggie was watching it, but I didn't actually, pay attention. I was busy listening to another streamer, Aaron, read a book. So, yes, they won. Of course they did. Silly question. I probably get, tomatoes thrown at me for even asking if they won. It's so silly. Anywho, I hope everyone has settled in, is comfortable, has a snack and a drink, or whatever meets your fancy. We're starting off tonight with Chapter 6. Back in 2011, Homecoming at Concordia, Part 2. Here we go. I opened the email dated Thursday, August 5th, 2011, shortly after my husband and I arrive at my in-laws' farm near Roanoke, Virginia. It is from Larson's husband Joe saying that she's going to be having heart surgery in a few days. My husband and I have been on the road and out of email contact for a couple of days, so it was already about time Joe thought Larson might be having surgery. They had been in Italy with their daughter Elizabeth on vacation when Larson developed a fever and became quite ill. They cut short their trip, and, when they returned to Minnesota, the doctors determined that she had endocarditis, an infection of the heart, and would need to have at least one of her heart valves replaced. That's scary. Absolutely scary. Larson had told us while we were at Breezy Point that she expected she would need surgery at some time in the future, but the development of a heart infection hastened the process and made it a much riskier procedure. I call Larson as soon as I hear the news. She is doing a little better on the antibiotics, but the doctors don't want to wait for her to complete the full course. She is scheduled for surgery on the following Monday. When I call again on Sunday, she has just been told that they are sending her by ambulance to the Mayo Clinic. Side note, I have been seen and cared for at the Mayo Clinic. It is a fantastic hospital. Only the one in Minnesota. I haven't been to the other locations, but it is an amazing hospital. She is unnerved by this news, so we don't talk long. As it turns out, the Mayo physicians think it's okay to wait for the antibiotics to work, so the surgery is delayed for several days. Iverson and Dryce, who I was informed last stream I was saying Dreas, and that is incorrect. It is Dryce, so my apologies. Iverson and Dryce go to visit her, and Larson wears them out talking all over the hospital to get her strength up. walking all over the hospital to get her strength up. She comes through the surgery with flying colors and is sent home 4 days later on IV antibiotics. She says it will be cutting it close as to whether she'd be able to go to homecoming, as she doesn't want to be traveling while she's still having to administer the IVs. 4 days before homecoming, we are thrilled to hear that she will be able to go with us. Dryce and Iverson pick fellows up at Minneapolis Airport. I have driven to Dryce's house in Hastings the night before, so I head to St. Cloud to pick up Larson, and then on to Brainerd to pick up Sutton. We arrive at the hotel in Fargo, which is across the river from Moorhead, at about the same time. The lobby is decorated with "Welcome Home Cobber" signs, and we unload our stuff before going to the bar for a glass of wine and dinner. Sounds nice. I would like some wine. The next day, after our homecoming lunch, we decide to stop by Park Region Dormitory to see our old haunts. We go down the first hallway and knock on the first door on the left, my old college room. The two young women who live in it now invite us in after we tell them who we are. They seem genuinely interested in knowing about what Concordia has been like 40 years earlier. 2 of the dorm rooms had been merged to create a larger room. "You guys sure have a lot of crap for 2 people," notes Larson. We had a bed, dresser, and desk. Each of the current occupants has a loft with a bed on top and a couch below. They have a media center with a television and sound system. On our way out, we recall having to go to the lounge to watch Dark Shadows on the dorm TV. Watching the episodes with 30 other screaming women added to the experience. "Hi, Charox. Welcome in. Good to see you." Larson looks great, considering what she'd been through a few months earlier. She jogs along beside us, if not a little ahead of us, as we walk briskly to our car in the parking lot. We are planning to drive to Fargo to go to Carol Wildman's Candy, a store Sutton said was a must visit. Okay, anything that's a candy store, in my opinion, is also a must visit, but that is just me. The candy store turns out to be a big hit. We all stock up on Chippers chocolate-covered potato chips that are a house specialty, and butterfly gummies. I try a chocolate-covered pickle and decide one of those might be enough. Yeah, I would agree. We each select our favorites: malted milk balls, chocolate-covered raisins, peanut brittle, turtles, and other delicacies to take home. Of course, in the end, most of the treats don't make it that far. I completely understand. We eat them in our hotel rooms all weekend long, and then in our cars on the way back to our various homes. We decide to meet Hoff and her husband Ken for dinner on Saturday. After dinner, I ask Sutton why she hadn't gone to medical school after graduation. She says that in late 60s, women were only allowed to take the MCAT, or Medical College Admissions Test, required for application to medical school, if a male who was already a physician recommended them, or if they were independently wealthy. I'm shocked and wonder whether there might be some sour grapes on her part. My job is to consult with medical school faculty to improve their teaching, and it was unthinkable to me that such discriminatory practices could have been common so recently. When I returned to Iowa City, I asked 2 of my women medical school colleagues whether this could be true. They both said yes. That before Title IX, enacted in 1972, and even for a while after that. It was very difficult for women to apply for medical school. At the time, there was a strong belief that women would not be good long-term investments because they would just get married, have babies, and quit working. I could believe that there would be discrimination in terms of admission to medical school, but I was dumbfounded that they wouldn't even allow women to apply. Since Sutton was not independently wealthy and did not have a male family member who was a physician who could recommend her, she became a medical technologist instead. At the homecoming worship service on Sunday morning, one of our classmates, who had been in the choir while we were undergraduates at Concordia and sang professionally after graduation, sits behind us in the field house during the service. Her singing is amazing, uninhibited, emotional, with conviction. Sometimes, if I'm sitting in front of someone with a strong voice, I like to pretend that I'm that voice. I've been there. Larson turns around after one of the hymns and gives her a big thumbs up. As we are leaving the field house, Larson and I talk about how much the service reminded us of our days at Concordia, when we could hear music like this, classical music, sung by choirs, performed on violins and trumpets and pianos, every day of the week at chapel. After the service, we gather in the parking lot to say goodbye. I hug Fellows, Dryce, then Iverson. They will be driving back to Hastings, where Dryce lives, and will take Fellows to the airport from there. We are all crying. But we know we'll be seeing each other in a year. We have decided we will meet in Montana the following summer. 5 of us will take the train to Glacier National Park, where Fellows will join us for a few days before taking us to her house to enjoy the lake, mountains, and just hanging out with each other. The dates are on our calendars, and we will begin crossing off the days about a month before our next adventure begins. And that's chapter 6. It is crazy to think about the discrimination that was, but more so even that still is. I have been in the hospital a lot for my heart stuff, all my heart conditions and whatnot. And the mere fact that it doesn't even dawn on me how many nurses and doctors I see that are women, that do an outstanding job, that don't get paid enough, that don't get enough respect. The fight that had to happen in order for them to be there doesn't even cross my mind, because I didn't grow up with it. And no one told me about it. Or at least not in great detail. Not enough to make it stick. So to read that and then think about that, it's yeah. Anyway, the amount of discrimination that's dealt out even today in 2021, it's terrible, basically. It's bad. Stuff's gotta change. Anyway, that was a lovely little chapter. And we're going to move on now right away to chapter 27, to chapter 7, not 27. 1968 to 1969, sophomore year, second semester. And I'm glad to see there's been some chatter. That's great. In January of our sophomore year, the Beta Taus, T-A-U-S, I'm not going to say that wrong. The Beta Taus decided to split from us, creating a very painful public controversy. They wrote a letter to the school newspaper explaining their reasoning. There's nothing, for instance, more stupid than to spend $20 on a girl at spring banquet when we wouldn't take her out any other time. We were looking forward to building floats, snow sculptures, and all school suppers with dread. Said in quotes. In truth, they thought we were cramping their style as far as it came to meeting women, and that they were going to start a revolution, because all of the other societies would follow suit by severing their ties with each other. Phi Cap disbanded, as we couldn't see ourselves being the lone women's society not linked to a brother society. I was disappointed because I had been looking forward to being a big sister, and now I wouldn't get that chance. In Beta Tau's letter to the student newspaper, they said, "If we make it, we'll make it big. If we don't make it, will disband, but we won't lose much when we think of how we've existed in the past. In fact, they didn't make it. No one else followed their lead, and they disbanded 3 years later. That winter we started hatching a plot to take a road trip to Montana to visit Fellows Ranch in Big Timber, Montana. Her dad managed the Jamerton Ranch outside of Big Timber near the Crazy Mountains. Fellows sometimes came home with me over short breaks, and I was looking forward to visiting the ranch and meeting her parents, 3 younger sisters, and 1 younger brother. We agreed that I would ask my parents if I could borrow their car for the trip when I went home for spring break. "Are they going to let you do it?" my sister-in-law asked in my parents' dining room that March when I went home for spring break. I had told her and my brother Brad earlier, when my parents were out of the room, that I was going to see if I could borrow the car for our trip. "Let you do what?" Mom asked. "I haven't asked them yet. Here goes. Would you let me drive the Oldsmobile to Montana this summer to visit Fellows? Sutton, Iverson, Larson, Dryce, and I would like to go to Big Timber, and the Oldsmobile is the only car that would hold all of us." "Let us think about it for a minute," Mom said. They went into the living room to confer, and I waited anxiously with Beth and Brad. I was pretty sure they were going to say no. I was only 19. I was an experienced driver, but I'd never driven anywhere long distance. Plus, if I took the Oldsmobile, they'd be left with only 1 car, and my dad would have to go 30 miles out of his way, twice a day, to take my mother back and forth to work. They came back into the room and looked at me and smiled. "We'll have to figure out a way to get the car to you," my dad said. They lived in Minneapolis, 160 miles from Moorhead. "But yes, you can borrow the car." Sweet. We weren't the kind of family that showed our emotions much, but if we had been, I would have jumped up and down and hugged them both. Instead, I said, "Thank you. I'm going to call my roommates and tell them." I called Iverson and Dryce first. Their parents lived near mine, so I didn't have to pay for long-distance calls. I waited till after 7 to call Sutton, Fellows, and Larson because long distance was cheaper in the evening. All of the roomies were overjoyed. When we got back to the dorm, Larson made a calendar on a piece of notebook paper for counting off the days before our trip. She taped it to the refrigerator. We crossed off each day with a different colored crayon from Dryce and Iverson's elementary school teacher-in-training supplies. In May of that year, the Red River was predicted to flood the Moorhead area. We joined sandbagging crews to try to prevent flooding in some of the residential places. The burlier guys filled the bags with sand, and we joined the assembly line that went from the parking lot where the sand truck was parked to the river. The line was about 40 people long, and we shifted upriver as each section of the barricade was finished. When the river got too high, they decided to close Concordia's campus. There were only 4 weeks of school left when the announcement was made, and the administration wasn't sure whether they would be able to reopen. Since the dorm was closing, Sutton invited us to go to her parents' farm to wait out the flood. All of us went except for Iverson and Fellows. Iverson's parents came and picked her up, and Fellows took the train home to Montana. The rest of us stayed at Sutton's house for 4 days. Her mom was a home economics teacher and a great baker, so we chomped our way through a couple of pans of brownies and other kinds of bars each day while awaiting word about whether we would return to Concordia. Sounds like my kind of baking. Sutton had 3 younger brothers who were all quite interested in the invasion. They hung around the living room when we were playing cards, listening closely to our conversations. Concordia decided to reopen school to finish the last 4 weeks of classes, so we headed back to campus. The weekend before school was out for the summer, my parents drove 2 cars to my aunt and uncle's house in Starbuck, halfway between Minneapolis and Moorhead, and I got to ride there with a fellow student who was going home for the weekend. I spent the weekend with my parents and drove the Olds back to Moorhead. The day after classes ended, 5 out of 6 of us roomies piled into the car and headed west to see Fellows, who had taken the train home so she could get all of her stuff there for the summer. According to my diary for the trip, we filled the car up with gas in Fargo at 6:26 a.m. for $5.64, 17.8 gallons. Okay. Who wants to do the math? Let's see. 17.8 gallons, $5.64. Wow. Okay. No math. Alright, I can't do it in my head very well. Not accurately anyway. So I'm going to use technology. So we got 17.8 gallons divided by 564. 3.15? Seriously? Ugh. Okay. That is not our life anymore. Moving on. My brain doesn't do math. Yeah. Mine only does when I'm not reading a book, okay? Our next stop was Sutton's house in Hunter, North Dakota at 7:30 a.m. We sat in her kitchen and her mother served us coffee and blueberry muffins. Sutton's mom submitted news on this momentous event to the local newspaper. I still have the clipping. We crossed into Montana at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time and saw our first mountains at either 2 p.m. or 2:45, depending on whose opinion you shared about what actually constituted a mountain. It's a fair argument. I'm not even sure I know the answer to that. As soon as we entered the state, we saw green hills on the horizon, and as we continued on toward Big Timber, we saw huge blue snow-capped peaks all around us. I bet that would have been cool. The bronze Oldsmobile 98 was a fine car, and it fit the 5 of us comfortably. It had air conditioning, cruise control, cloth seats, and a huge trunk that had more than enough room for our stuff. We arrived at the Big Timber city limits at 7:15 p.m. and drove back and forth on the town's main thoroughfare 3 times, bombing the drag, aka cruising or scooping the loop, a favorite pastime in small towns that mostly involved seeing and being seen by others who were likewise engaged. Okay, side note, when I was in high school here in the States, I did the exact same thing. It's just what you did. Back, because, cheaper gas, so it was fine. According to my diary, we were in town only 5 minutes and we had 2 guys follow us and 2 other cars waved. Kids in the cars, I mean. Guy-type kids. Looks promising. On our second time down the street, we saw our first cowboy. He was standing next to a pickup truck and wore a tan cowboy hat and snakeskin boots. Yeehaw. At 7:41 p.m., we pulled into Fellows Ranch. The yellow 1-story ranch house was surrounded on all sides by corrals for the livestock. Corrals for the livestock. Corrals are something different. Fellows' mother and father, sisters and brother, and Fellows herself all came outside to greet us. We staggered out of the car and stretched, relieved to be walking around after the 13-hour drive. The next night we went to see Valley of the Dolls at the drive-in and hung out at the park with Pete and Wally, 2 of Fellows' high school friends, who were on leave from the military. I love drive-ins. They had been among the unlucky ones with low draft numbers. Wally didn't have a college deferment, and Pete had already used his. The note in my diary says we arrived home at 3:30 a.m. and went to bed. What would Dean Dorothy think? The next day, we went to Bozeman to see the Montana State campus. All of us thought about transferring. It was a beautiful campus, and the guys, wow. 3-to-1 odds, and we really got the looks. Quite different from dull old CC. It sure would be fun to go there, for at least a quarter. None of us ended up transferring to Montana State University, but we enjoyed being outnumbered by the men on campus, even if it was only for a day. Back at Fellows' ranch, Larson played her guitar, and we sang our favorite tunes. Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. At a later reunion, I was positive this song was from Fiddler on the Roof. A Google search proved that I was wrong, and that Larson's recollection was in fact correct. It had been made popular by a girl singer, Mary Hopkins. The night before we left Montana, we got through one verse of Concordia's hymn, "On firm foundation grounded," before we all started bawling, including Fellows' family. Soon our adventure would be coming to a close. I don't think we made the newspaper on our return trip, but it was good to see Sutton's family again before we went our separate ways for the summer. And that's chapter 7. And now it looks like we have a sneak peek from a picture of the group of them at Glacier National Park. So let me see if I can get that up on screen for us. There you go. And yes, a wild... Ooh, it's a Latios. Everyone's been going nuts about this one. So, I think I already have one. But, what can it hurt to try and get another? Alright, let me check to see how we're doing on... Oh, we're ready to start the battle. Sweet. So... It really helps if I... Wow, that's loud. See how quick that was? We had like one enemy. I'm gonna turn that way down. Wow, that was loud. Okay. Alright, Koro and Charox gets the prize. Buster for Koro, gold for Charox. Excellent. Good job. Good job. I need to collect everything I can because I'm a brand new captain, which is cool. To keep things simple, we're just going to go down here. And yeah. This will be super simple. Have at it. There you go. Exclamation SR to get in Stream Raiders. It's a fun one. Okay. So there's that. So for those of you that don't know, I'm starting my stream rating captain journey as of tonight for the bonus stream. That is the link to get involved. It's absolutely free to do so if you want to. Of course, you don't have to, but it's fun. And on that note, I'm going to take a drink, and then we'll get into the next chapter. And I may get a visitor from my cat. In a moment, we'll see. See what he does. Alright. Chapter 8, 2012, Glacier National Park and Helena, Montana. Is it pronounced Helena? I think it is. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure someone will tell me if I'm wrong, but that's okay. I would prefer to say it correctly. I check the tickets for the 1000th time as I am packing. Tomorrow morning I will leave Iowa City and drive 5 hours to Hastings to meet Dryce and Iverson. Dryce's husband will drive us to the train station in St. Paul, and we will take off for our big adventure to Glacier National Park. We will pick Fellows up in Shelby, Montana along the way. I had ordered the train tickets for Dryce, Iverson, and myself, to be sure we all got on the same train at the same time. I close my suitcase and pull the tickets out of the Amtrak envelope. I scan the names on them. Christy Ferguson, Diane Fox, and Dottie Iverson. Iverson? Oh no. Iverson is her maiden name. The name on the ticket should be Simmons. I realize this late date. It's too late to replace it, and I'm sure that they will not let her get on the train if her ID doesn't match the name on the ticket. I go into the kitchen, sit at the counter, dial the Amtrak 800 number, and wait on hold for about half hour. The person who answers said she will flag the ticket, and she said I should call the St. Paul station to let them know. I call the station 5 times over the next 3 hours before I get through. The station's only open when trains depart and arrive. The woman says she'll make a note on the passenger list and thinks it will be okay. I call Iverson and explain the message. Explain the mess. I suggest that she bring a copy of her birth certificate or marriage license in case they give her any grief. We arrive at the train station an hour before our scheduled departure. The train is an hour late, so they won't be checking passengers in for a while. Finally, they announce that they are ready to check people in. Iverson goes first of our group. We had decided that if they won't let her on the train, the rest of us won't go either. Banding together. I tell the ticket agent that I had called the day before about Iverson's name being wrong on her ticket, and had been told that it would not be a problem. The agent scrutinizes the ticket, looks at the passenger list, and waves her through. Phew. The train is full of young guys going to North Dakota to work in the oil fields. We spend most of the day in the club car, playing cards and looking at oil fields and the prairies out of the full-length windows. As the train pulls into the station at Shelby, we can see fellows standing on the platform. We all wave madly at her, but have to save our hugs until the conductor has unloaded our suitcases because the train is about to pull away. The stainless steel step at the bottom of the train cars is a stretch from my short legs, but I manage to land on the firmer ground without incident. After Iverson and Dryce get their suitcase from the checked baggage area, it takes a few tries to get everything loaded into the trunk of Fellow's 1989 Buick Riviera. We finally manage with only a couple of small bags left over that we have to put on the floor in the back seat. We still have an hour or so to drive to get to the bed and breakfast in East Glacier, where we will spend the night before going into the main park. The next morning we go to the Luna restaurant for breakfast. The inside of the restaurant looks like something out of a John Wayne movie. Huge wooden beams, wooden booths and tables, wooden chairs, a counter made from wooden beams. There's a lot of wood. A banner that hangs outside above the door says, "Huckleberry pie is ready." We consider having pie for breakfast and opt for omelets and pancakes instead. We buy a whole pie to bring back to our cabin. Dryce has French toast with huckleberry syrup. Iverson has huckleberry pancakes the size of a dinner plate. Sutton and I have omelets and toast with huckleberry jam. I'm sensing a theme there. Yeah. I'm not sure what Larson had, but it was probably something healthier than either omelets or pancakes, because she always sticks to a small portions with salads and fruit. Or at least she does most of the time. When she goes off the wagon, she does so in a very big way. Don't we all? We pile back into the Buick and head for Glacier. We stop at the park entrance to take some pictures. There are a couple of guys with Harleys taking each other's photos by the sign. They offer to move their motorcycles out of the way and we say they should leave them, so people who see our photos might think that we had ridden the bikes ourselves. That's funny. We take their pictures and they take ours, and then we get our tickets to enter the park. The ranger staffing the entrance is a woman in her 40s, wearing a Smokey the Bear hat and uniform. We tell her we are former college roommates from Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and Montana, who have known each other for over 30 years. She says we have picked a great day to come to Glacier. We check into our cabins. Larson, Sutton, and I are in one, and Iris and Dryce and Fellows are next door. Reconvene and break out the huckleberry pie. We have no plates, and all we have are utensils and plastic spoons. So the 6 of us take turns taking bites until we've polished it off. As we settle in, Larson and Sutton both call their spouses to let them know we had arrived safely. I go outside and sit on the porch, feeling a little sad that I have no one to call. The next morning, Sutton wants to take the boat trip on St. Mary's Lake. It is a short walk down the hill to the boat launch, and it's a beautiful morning, so we decide to go. We buy our tickets from a young guy who notices my Iowa golf shirt and says he is a student at the University of Iowa. We have about half hour before the launch, so we walk along the lakeshore looking at the beautiful spring flowers. Once we board the 30-passenger tour boat, the young woman guide begins telling us about the history of the glaciers. I'm getting a little claustrophobic, so I take a turn on the front deck, where I can breathe the fresh mountain air and see the lake, mountains, and shore without having to look through the windows of the boat. The boat goes right past Wild Goose Island, one of the most photographed places in Glacier National Park. The glaciers themselves are still full of snow, and we can see them melting into the streams at the bottom of the mountain. The boat pulls over to the shore and everyone gets out. We all hike into the woods for about a half mile, then stop to look at the rushing creek and roaring waterfall. The scent of the pine trees takes me back to the summer camp in northern Minnesota. At the halfway point in the trip, the boat circles back and the views look completely different as we slowly edge our way along the shoreline. The trees are still recovering from a forest fire that had struck the park a few years earlier. From our vantage point, we can see the new growth trees coming up out of the blackened stumps. And our guide reminds us that forest fires can be events of renewal for forests that have overgrown. It still makes me sad to see the devastation. We make our reservations for the Jammer bus ahead of time, taking a risk that the weather might not cooperate, but wanting to make sure that we don't miss our chance to take a bus tour. The day turns out to be spectacular, 60 degrees and sunny. Jammer buses are like convertibles with tops that can be removed on the left or left on, depending on the weather. When we get to the parking lot, there are 5 buses waiting, all with their roofs open to the air. Our guide for this trip is an older guy who is an actor in Australia, the rest of the year, and who obviously enjoys his work. He tells corny jokes about what bears do and tells us many times that we are unbelievably lucky to have such spectacular weather this time of year. I feel like that would be me telling corny jokes. Our first stop is for a photo op with Wild Goose Island in the background. Our guide takes photos of each group with the island in the background. Then we pile back on the bus. Along the way, we see mountain goats, bighorn sheep, and elk. Those of us in the back of the bus are lucky to see a bear crossing the road behind us. We periodically stop for pop-ups. When the bus stops in the middle of the road, we can jump up and take photos of the mountains, the fallen rocks, and the wildlife. Around every corner there is something new to look at. The only not so much fun part is getting stuck in traffic for about a half hour on a section of Going to the Sun Road that is under construction. Even that is kind of cool, as we can take pictures of the cars winding back and forth along the mountain road in the distance. We stop for lunch at Lake McDonald, and we are worried that we won't finish in time to get back on the bus, as we have to wait in line for a half hour. We finally get a table and order right away. I have walleye with a light crust, just like my Uncle Stan used to make for us when we returned from his Canadian fishing trips. It is well worth the wait. We have to run to catch the bus. There are 5 jammer buses in the parking lot, so it's a good thing that Sutton has written down the number of our bus. Otherwise, we might have gotten on the wrong bus when we didn't see our guide right away. Yep, that would be me too. My favorite picture from the jammer trip is from just outside a tunnel that went through the mountain. The bus stopped just short of the tunnel, and the photo shows the mountain, the inside of the tunnel, and the road on the other side, from the other side. We leave for Helena the next morning. The drive is beautiful, with mountain views around every corner. When we arrive at Fellow's house, she directs us to the rooms where we will be staying. We unpack our stuff and meet upstairs in their dining room for lunch. Fellow's had always been a great cook, and she sets out sandwiches, salad, and lemon bars that had been our favorite when we all lived together in our apartment in Moorhead. Fellow's 13-year-old granddaughter, Mackenzie, joins us for lunch. She is curious to meet the women she had heard so much about. Mackenzie and her dad have lived with Fellow's and Ron since Mackenzie was a little girl. She is getting ready for a piano recital, and Fellow's asks her to play for us. She sits very upright at the piano and plays with the same emotion and expert technique as her grandmother, who watches with great pride in Mackenzie's playing. When she is finished, we clap enthusiastically, and she smiles shyly and takes a bow. The next morning, we go to downtown Helena to see Fellow's piano studio, visit the town square, and have lunch at a sandwich place in a converted factory building. On the way back, we drive by Canyon Ferry Lake, and Fellow's points to the park where they had held the reception for her son Ron's wedding the previous summer. Fellow's tells us there was a canopy over the shelter in a spot near the parking lot, bordered by the mountains on the back and the lake in the front. What a spectacular place for a wedding. They had lucked out with the weather that day. As we whiz along the highway with Fellow's driving, Larson and Dryce sitting in the front, Sutton, Iverson, and me in the back, the discussion turns to stories about how we had met our spouses. We all know Sutton's story. She met Tim in high school, and we knew him from our days at Concordia. Iverson married a guy from Big Timber Fellow's Montana hometown. They met during our trip to Europe when we were visiting the Army base there, Army base where Tom was stationed. Dryce had met John through a mutual friend, and Larson met Joe at her church. Fellow's also married a guy from Big Timber, someone she had known in high school and reconnected with years later. Sitting in the car listening to my friends talk about how they had met their husbands, I try not to cry. I met my husband, John, in the fall of 1971, when I was living with my dad in Golden Valley, Minnesota, after graduating from college. My mom had died the year before. Someone from the University of Michigan called me a couple of days before I was scheduled to leave for Ann Arbor to start graduate school. The caller said, "Is this Christy Martinson? I'm afraid there's been a mistake in your housing assignment. You were assigned to Fletcher Hall, and that's a men's dormitory. So we're putting you on the North Campus instead." The caller gave me the specifics over the phone. There was no email or texting in those days, and there wasn't time for mail to arrive with the details. The few weeks after I moved into the dorm, John called and asked me out. He knew that I had moved into Fletcher Hall, as I was originally slated to by the university. I would have been his roommate, although I didn't find that out until quite a bit later. After John and I had been dating for a few weeks, his roommates told me that he had asked me out the first time on a dare, because back in August before school started, he and his roommates had been sent computer-generated letters from housing naming me as their roommate, and they were all curious to see what I was like. It's kind of funny. They had joked about taking turns guarding the shower for me so I could have privacy, and John and one of his roommates had agreed that I should have the room in their suite with just one bed. John's story about asking me out was different. He insisted that he had met me in class in the School of Social Work. On our first date, we went to a John Denver concert at Chrysler Arena in Ann Arbor. The warm-up act that night was Bill and Taffy Danoff, also known as the Starland Vocal Band, who later became famous with their hit single, Afternoon Delight. We got married in May of 1973, and were happily married for 38 years. The morning of November 3rd, 2011, I called my brother and brother-in-law to tell them that John had been admitted to the hospital. From the waiting room, I emailed my 5 friends to ask for their prayers. At the time, I thought we were embarking on a long journey of frequent trips to the dialysis center and limited mobility. It turned out that John had just had a silent heart attack, diagnosed when I took him to the emergency room. 2 days after I called Larson, John arrested again this morning, and they were not able to resuscitate him. You mean he's dead? Yes. And I started crying. Larson said she'd call the others. I told her the funeral would be Tuesday at 7 p.m. She called the next day to say that the Minnesota roomies would all be there. Fellows who lived in Montana would not be able to come. The roomies arrived in full force about an hour before the service was to begin. The weather had started turning bad, sleet and wind as the darkness descended, and I was glad to see them. Up until that time, I had somewhat kept it together, but when they hugged me one by one, I did the best I could just to cry and not create a scene by sobbing hysterically. I remembered Sutton talking about how important it was for her not to cry at her dad's funeral, but she had to keep it together for her mom and her brother's sake. I didn't particularly feel that responsibility, and I'd often thought about if you can't cry at funerals, then when exactly should you be able to cry? Nonetheless, I didn't want to completely lose it an hour before the funeral. My Iowa City congregation is known for its music, and I especially appreciated being able to share it with my roomies, with whom I had shared so much beautiful music during our days at Concordia. I had selected the hymns the day before, paging through the hymn book. I asked Pastor Priest to see whether the church's woodwind ensemble would play for the funeral, and he said they could. The senior choir also sang. On the way home from the funeral, my younger son, Andrew, told me he had been listening to the Johnny Cash song, Let the Train Blow the Whistle. I looked it up online and understood why he thought his dad would appreciate it. I don't want no aggravation when my train has left the station. Let the train blow the whistle when I go. John was not one for a lot of fanfare. And I can't turn the page. There we go. In the car with my friends on the way to Helena, it is my turn as Iverson asks me how I met John. All I could say was it was too soon for me to talk about. That ends the conversation, and we move on to talking about something else. I've become good at that, ending conversations, when people suddenly realize that I am uncomfortable with the topic. Rightfully so. When we get back to Fellows' house, Dryce and I play cards with Mackenzie. Larson and Iverson decide to go for their daily walk. Fellows' house is in a semi-rural area. There aren't a lot of options for hiking. They take off down a path to the ravine, and we figure we'll see them in about 45 minutes. An hour and a half later, there's still no sign of them. They hadn't taken cell phones because there is no service out in the country. Fellows is the first one to wonder aloud why they aren't back yet. Her husband Ron comes in a few minutes later and asks if they have returned. Where could they have gone? Could they have gotten lost? We have no way to look for them since they hadn't really known or said where they were going. Larson had heart surgery the year before. Let me start that again, sorry. Larson had heart surgery the year before to have a valve replaced. What if something has happened to her? We start to develop our strategy for going to look for them. Fellows and I will take the upper part of the trail, so at least one of us would know where we are going, and Sutton and Ron will take the lower part of the trail. Mackenzie will stay at the house so she can let them in if they come back. As we're about to head out, Iverson and Larson arrive sheepishly at the back door, a little flushed and sweaty from having taken a longer hike than expected. They had apparently taken a lower fork on the trail and gotten turned around before they came to the clearing and recognized Fellows' house in the distance. They kept the house in sight as they followed the trail back. Hey Hicks, welcome in. You got caught up. Sweet. Fellows' son Marcus and her husband Ron cook fish on the grill, and we enjoy our dinner on their deck that faces the ravine where Iverson and Larson got lost. Marcus has been having problems with his back, so Larson volunteers to sleep on the floor in the family room, so Marcus can sleep in his own bed that he has given up for us. That means I will sleep on the floor too. Larson sacks out right away, as usual. It takes me a little longer, but I eventually fall asleep too. The drive to the train station takes about 3 hours, so we get up early the next morning, eat breakfast, say goodbye to Fellows' family, and hit the road. The train is about an hour late leaving Shelby, Montana, so we have been laughing out in the... Wow, saying all the right words tonight. So we have been hanging out in the dinky little train station killing time. It's been a great week, but we're all ready to go home. Dryce checks the Amtrak map on her cell phone so we are ready to board when the train rumbles into the station. Dryce and Iverson check their larger suitcases, and we all step on the metal stool to reach the first step on the train car. On the return trip, Dryce and Iverson get seats in the front of the car. I am right behind them, and Sutton and Larson are toward the back of the car. We eat dinner at about 6:30 p.m., then go to the club car to play some cards until 9. We go back to our seats. We can't afford sleeping cars, and someone had told us it was like sleeping on a moving pool table anyway. And each of us settles in for the night's rest. Dryce has her Kindle and reading light, and Iverson and I both drift off at about 11. At about 1 a.m., the train stops and goes completely dark out in the middle of nowhere. We hear a lot of commotion in the dining car ahead of us, where the conductor and staff hang out after lights out. Dryce and I make our way to the dining car, and it is completely empty. People had left their stuff lying on tables as if they had vacated in a hurry. The train is parked in a wooded area, so we can't really see anything except for slivers of moonlight between the branches. After about half hour of walking back and forth between our seats in the dining car trying to find someone who knew what was going on, Dryce finally sees the conductor and some other guys with flashlights outside by the tracks, looking under the train. Still no clue what is going on. About 45 minutes later, the conductor gets back on the train. He says it will be another hour or so before they can fix the problem, but then we'll be on our way. So maybe we aren't going to be murdered on the Orient Express after all. Larson and Iverson sleep through the whole thing. Dryce and I keep each other company, or more accurately, magnify each other's fretting, and Sutton tries to go back to sleep. The train finally does get going again. I have never been so glad to see the lights of a small town in North Dakota as we rumble past Williston Station. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 8. Alright. So before we move on, let me see how our stream rate battle is doing. There's 2 minutes left to get units down if you want to play. 2 more minutes. Hey Rio, welcome in. So if you want to play along, there's the link. And also, if you want to get this book for yourself, here is a link to Amazon where I got it. It's an adorable book, and we are just past the halfway mark right now, as we will get into chapter 9 here very shortly. I am going to take this opportunity, since the battle is going to start very soon, to take a short stretch break, take a few sips, and then I'll be right back. Alright, I have returned. Got about 27 seconds or so. Let's see. Koro's got 3 units in, Karox has got a unit in, RNL's got 4, and Kerbo Waffles. I'm not sure who you are, but thank you for putting units in. That's great. Alright. Here we go. This will be a quick one. And done. That was so fast. Kerbo and Ikokoro, good job. Archer Scrolls and gold, of course. Excellent. Gonna collect all this stuff for myself because I'm gonna need it to upgrade my captain stuff. Alright. Let's get started on the next battle. A few more enemies this time. We're gonna start right down here. And feel free to place whatever you like. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So again, here's that link just in case you need it. The only way to level up your units if you're new to this is just by playing them. It's that simple. It is that simple. And I'll even do that. That way we can all see it, and I'll actually move it over here because the chat is appearing where my head is and above, and my green screen is freaking out right now. What is going on? Let me see if I can fix that real quick. There we go. That should do. Cool. Well, thank you all for being here. We are just getting into chapter 9. We're just over halfway through the book. It's been a super enjoyable read. The last chapter, of course, that was a tough one to swallow. Christy, I never like reading about those kinds of things with such close family passing away, but I applaud you for putting that out there and expressing it on page. That's not an easy thing to do. I hope in doing so that it was more therapeutic than anything else. That is my hope, at least. So thank you for being open and honest with us and allowing us to experience that with you, even in just this brief text form. I appreciate it very much. Alright, that being said, we have a new picture for Chapter 9, which is 1969 to 1970, junior year, first semester. We're moving up in our college life. And let's see if I can get that in there. Focus. There we go. There's the dorm. I'm trying to read. I can't quite. Oh, I know it's a library. I'm pretty sure it's a library. I just can't make out the rest, but that's okay. Pretty sure it's a library. Alright. Chapter 9. Here we go. Okay. Yelvisker Library. Well, that explains why I couldn't see it properly, because I wasn't even sure what word I was forming. But sounds good. At least we knew it was a library, you know? That's the main thing. We decided to move off campus our junior year. Our apartment was in the upstairs of an older home on the main drag in Moorhead, kitty corner from Concordia's president's house, and a half block from the rest of the campus. If you heard of John Visker, the folk songwriters named after his grandfather. Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured with a name like that it would have to be named after somebody, for sure, so makes sense. Iverson's parents wouldn't let her move off campus, so she became a resident advisor in Felstad Hall, an older dorm where the upper-class women lived. Larson and I shared one bedroom, and Fellows, Dryce, and Sutton shared the other. Sundays were always a special time for us. We had an early breakfast and then walked about 8 blocks to Trinity Lutheran Church for worship services. We always sat in the first row of the side balcony, overlooking the altar and pulpit. The pastors were Paul Hansen and Bruce Herman. Both were good, but we had a special affection for Pastor Herman, with his bright smile and encouraging sermons. Partway through our junior year, his wife was involved in a ski lift accident and was in a coma for several months. Man, that sounds awful. It was a sad time for him and all of us members of the congregation. The Sanctuary of Trinity had a floored-to-lofted ceiling sculpture that said, "I am the bread of life." I remember seeing the sculpture again in 2010 during the live broadcast of the funeral of Concordia's president, Pamela, I'm going to say this name wrong, Joliker? I'm not even going to try. Pamela. We'll just go with Pamela. Savage. Hello. Welcome in. Settle in. We're just diving through this book. Exclamation SR for String Raiders. Hang out. Sit back. Thank you for following. Pamela, who had died suddenly of a stroke. Even in that dark time, the message of the sculpture was as reassuring as it had been when we attended services at Trinity. On Sundays, we often made peach, blueberry, apple, cobbler from white cake mixed with butter and sprinkled on top of canned pie filling. Another Sunday treat was 3-layered Jell-O. Now you're talking my language. 3-layer Jello. By some miracle, a package of red powder became 3 separate layers. A regular Jello layer on the bottom, a whipped version in the middle that combined the Jello and whipped cream type mixture, and then straight whipped cream on top. That sounds amazing. In the commercials, they made this delicacy in clear glass goblets so you could easily see all 3 layers. We just settled for a regular bowl and discovered the layers when we scooped the concoction out with a big spoon. After church, we'd read the Sunday paper or do homework, then have dinner together. As with the rest of the week, we took turns preparing dinner on Sunday and doing the dishes afterwards. Sunday dinner was special because we had dessert, which we didn't do the rest of the week. Unless you continued the nightly runs to the corner store for chocolate licorice or to the corn crib on campus for red dollar candy. Which I would not. Those are different. That is not dessert. Your secret is safe. Sometimes on Sunday, if we didn't have a lot of homework, make that rarely rather than sometimes, we watched the Minnesota Vikings on the small portable black and white, or more accurately green and white, television that my dad had recovered from one of his insurance clients after a fire. It smelled like smoke every time you turned it on, but it worked. Sunday evenings were like lunchtime during the week, where we each prepared our own meals. My lunch every day for the 2 years we lived in the apartment consisted of a tuna fish sandwich on white toast and potato chips, a dill pickle, an apple, and a glass of milk. Every day. You know, that doesn't sound too bad, minus the everyday part. I could see that getting old. Our schedules varied during the week, so the only time we were together on weekdays was at chapel at 10 a.m. and dinner in the evening. Since we were on a pretty strict budget, we didn't keep a lot of snack foods in the apartment. That is a shame. We always had Hershey's Cocoa, the kind for baking, vanilla, and sugar so we could make fudge when the spirit moved us. We didn't have a candy thermometer, so we used the old-fashioned method of testing the concoction in cold water. Soft ball, hard ball, crack, whatever, with varying degrees of success. Sometimes we forgot to test it until we'd already started to get pretty set. The other times we got impatient and poured it out of the hot pan before it even approached the soft ball stage. Sometimes we needed a chisel to eat it. Sometimes a spoon, and every once in a while we could actually cut it and make pieces of fudge. It tasted good any of these ways as we sat on the living room floor and ate it straight out of the pan. That's what I'm talking about. With 5 of us working on it, sometimes 6 if Iverson came to visit, we demolished a batch of fudge in pretty good order. Cleaning up the pan was another matter. The rule was whoever made the fudge had to clean up the pan, so someone else didn't get stuck with a job if it was one of those rock-hard batches. Larsa and I often went to the library together to study, especially since we frequently had papers to write. She was an English major, I was a sociology major, and needed to look stuff up. We became power users of the card catalog. No online resources back then. One room of the library had windows on 3 sides and was a great place to study during the day. Also a good place to be on the lookout for good-looking, unattainable guys, if one needed to break from the books. The cafeteria was still the best place for such activity, but the library would do in a pinch. The other roomies didn't hang out in the library quite as much as we did. Sutton was a medical technology major, so her out-of-class time was often spent in the lab. Fellows was in the music building practicing, and Dryce and Iverson worked on their elementary education homework in the apartment. Dryce and Iverson hung up their classroom bulletin board decorations in the apartment after they got them back from the instructors, so we had the best decorations ever. At Christmas, we had a construction paper fireplace with the construction paper stockings hung for each of us. That's cute. Our tree was decorated with construction paper chains and popcorn and cranberry strings, and, in the spring, we had a white construction paper lattice with colored spring flowers made of tissue paper. After dinner during the week, if Larson and I were studying in the apartment, we took music breaks. She'd play folk and country songs on her guitar, and both of us would sing. If the others were ready for a break, they'd join us. One year, I made an audio tape of Larson's playing and us singing for my brother, who was in the military in Korea. Our title song was Proud Mary, my brother's favorite song. I packed the tape along with chocolate chip cookies layered with popcorn, cheap packing that kept the cookies from crumbling. My brother wrote me a letter saying he had played the tape over the loudspeaker at the army base. I was horrified until he told me the next letter that he had only been teasing when he told me that. That's funny. That's a typical brother move right there. Kerbal Waffles, are you there? Might not be. Our junior year, Larson and I volunteered to edit the social section of the college yearbook. The fact that we were among the least social people on Concordia didn't deter us from taking on the task. The editors that year, Norma and Joe, decided that our yearbook would be unique and would reflect what was going on in the world as well as what was going on at Concordia. David, welcome in, sir. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you're doing well. The introduction reflected the introspection and loneliness that can accompany college life. Throughout the book, there were references to social issues and photos of students participating in the world, including challenging racial issues and protesting the war, alongside the usual photos of freshmen in beanies and the homecoming queen. Our section included the non-academic, non-sports, non-student government activities, such as Concordia societies, our version of fraternities and sororities, musicals, Normandy nights, monthly entertainment put on by the societies, visiting musical groups, that year included Blood, Sweat, and Tears, plays, and the January 19th movement, a national anti-war group formed to protest the war, named for the group that marched in front of the White House on January 19th, 1968, in support of the Eartha Kitt, who had publicly denounced President Johnson and the war. And I need to take a quick sip. By the time we were up on our deadline, Larson and I were getting a little punchy writing captions. Fortunately, most people don't read them. My favorite said, Karen gets hers, and so does Ricky, in reference to the freshman beanies. Our class schedules varied enough that we were able to maneuver reasonably well with one bathroom for 5 women. Okay, that's a magic trick right there. Yes, thank you. I'm going to do it again. Thank you for that hydrate. There was no shower, just a white bathtub with claw feet. We used to keep the window open for air circulation, and one time a squirrel got into the bathroom. That must have been fun. We didn't know it was there until Dryce noticed the towel wiggling on the towel rack across from her when she was sitting on the john. Okay. The squirrel was hanging upside down from the towel. She screamed bloody murder, I bet, and the rest of us came running. But then went running in on the other direction when the squirrel jumped down onto the floor and stood there frozen, undoubtedly more scared than we were. In our tearing around, we left the bathroom door open so the squirrel got out into the apartment. We went downstairs to get our neighbors, who were Concordia seniors and, we thought, might know what to do. Calmer heads eventually prevailed, and we left all the doors and windows open until the squirrel finally found its way out. For a long time after that, we shook the towels when we went into the bathroom to make sure the squirrel had not returned. Well, that's a funny ending to Chapter 9. That is hilarious. So much fun. Yes, thank you for reposting that link. How is it going? Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Still got 13 minutes, plenty of time to get units in. This will be an easy fight just like the rest, so not too worried. What's the story? That's a good question. I am reading a book by a very, very local author. Friends for Life, as you can see on the screen. This is essentially a story about her and 5 friends who have been friends for over 50 years. And this is just a really neat recollection of events, life that they've shared together. It's obviously a break from, typical books that we might read, like this one that's coming up next, War of the Worlds. But it's fun. It's real life. The things that are happening in here were true stories. They're not just made up fantasies or hopes or dreams. And some of them are hilarious, and some of them are saddening because of just the torment that they carry. But it's fascinating to be able to read through this and just kind of experience what life was like through somebody else's eyes. And our author is here. She's in the chat. So if you ever have questions about what it is that I'm reading, hopefully she'll be able to answer those for you. And let's see if I can get this going. What is going on here? I know I'm not frozen because I can still see myself on the other screen. Oh, there we go. Wow, that was weird. Everything just kind of went wonky on me there for a second in OBS. I need my revenge on the spiders in Stream Raiders. A spider was perched on my head at the beginning of the stream and I freaked. I saved the spider and took it outside. Well, I hope you're fine. As said in this book, calmer heads will prevail, and you can too. Looks like you did, because you saved the spider and gave it a new chance outside, so that's great. Alright. Chapter 10 is up next. It's a very short chapter. It's 1, 2, 3 pages. Just a quick you're well, good. It's just a quick recap on, let's see, Chapter 10, 2013. Garuki, hello. Hello. Thank you so much for the host. I appreciate that. And I just realized that the alert box was covered up by the Stream Raiders battle. My apologies. Auto host hasn't been going on for like 2-3. I noticed that. I've been doing a lot of them manually myself. In fact, while I'm here, before I read this next chapter, let me do a few shout outs here because we got some cool folks in the chat. There's Karuki and a new friend that I've made, David Air on the Air. Our schedules haven't been allowing us to catch each other a lot, but definitely worth checking out with music. And we've got, let's see, I'm going to spell this correctly or incorrectly if I don't check. We've got Aranel. She's a great reader. She's got such a soothing voice. And if you like games of quite a few varieties, we've got Julie in the house as well. She also makes me lift weights from time to time. And oh, thank you so much, David, for that host. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You'll see in my panels down below the United Storytellers Group, USG. Myself and Aaron Smith Audio have created this new group, this new team, to promote basically readers and to promote the idea of reading for other people. So, exclamation point, any of those names that you see there, those shortened versions, they are all part of the USG. Feel free to check them out. They're all great people. They all read at one time or another. Some of us are focused only on reading, whereas others do a few other things as well. But either way, feel free to look at those. And of course, if you're ever interested in joining the Discord, there you go. Alright, let's see. How are we doing on Stream Raiders? We got 8 minutes, that's plenty of time. I'm going to read this next chapter because it's a short one, and then we'll see where we're at. Yes, Chapter 10, 2013, Island Lake, Park Rapids, Minnesota. Or if you're from Minnesota, Minnesota. Just kidding. Don't shoot me. Larson and her husband Joe have recently moved from St. Cloud in central Minnesota to a lake home in northern Minnesota near Park Rapids. She invites us to visit her house for our next adventure. Their house is surrounded by pine trees and overlooks Island Lake, with steps leading from their deck to the lakeshore. Lakeshore. Yep, it's good. Larson has planned several outings for us. The first is going to Itasca State Park, a place the Minnesota Roomies learned about in our state history classes in grade school because it holds the headwaters of the Mississippi River. I did not know that. Learned something new. Larson is the only one who has actually been there recently. I grew up in Brainerd, which is on the Mississippi River, and Dryce currently lives in Hastings, which is also on the Mississippi. So we are especially excited to see the origination of the river. The headwaters are marked by a big sign. We ask another visitor to take our photo. A young man is getting ready to start a trip down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico in a canoe with a friend. That's a long trip, but I've often wondered how fun that would be. He is celebrating a year of sobriety and plans to spend about 3 months canoeing down the Mississippi. We join his other friends and his family in cheering him on, and wonder whether he has enough stuff in his canoe to make it that far. I really hope he stops a couple times to, get supplies. That would be nuts. The photo on the back cover of the book was taken at the state park. Okay, so am I getting that in? I can't tell. There we go. There it is. Thank you, Christy. Then we walk across the land bridge to view the headwaters from the other side before heading back to the park itself. There's a monument to an Indian girl at the park headquarters, and we read about her story before heading down the path of Lake Itasca. Itasca? So many words that I feel like I'm saying wrong. Anyway, there are several very large trees at the water's edge, and we take turns 2 at a time having our pictures taken hugging the trees. On the way back to the car, we encounter a black snake on the path, and Larson assures us that it's not poisonous. I'd still be suspicious, just saying. We are somewhat relieved, but move quickly down the path once the snake has slithered off into the woods. Larson's house has a walkout basement with 1 bedroom where Dryce and Fellows sleep, and a family room where Sutton and I share a fold-out couch. Iverson sleeps on an air mattress in the bedroom with Dryce and Fellows. I managed to break the shower downstairs for the first time I use it, as the shower head does not swivel like I thought it would. Whoops. The thought of 7 of us having a single shower among us is daunting, and the likelihood of finding a hardware store open at that time of day is slim to none. Larson's husband Joe comes to the rescue. He's able to find a replacement shower head in the garage, and my panic subsides. That's lucky. Larson worked as a cook at Camp Warren in northern Minnesota during the summers when she was in college, so it shouldn't have surprised me that she was a good cook, but it did. One night we had fantastic tasting burgers that she had cooked on the grill and didn't learn until after dinner that they were made from buffalo meat. I wonder how that tasted. I wouldn't necessarily have tried ground buffalo on my own, and appreciated being exposed to something new. Larson is extremely conscientious about her diet, since the scare with her heart tells us that buffalo is much lower in fat than ground beef. That much I knew. The night Joe joins us as we go... Let me start that again. That night, Joe joins us as we go to a local tavern for dinner. The place is called Foxy's Tavern. Larson and Joe are well known in this place as they live within walking distance. The building is made from logs, and there are a couple of different rooms, including the bar. The tables are small squares, and we push several of them together to make room for our group. We order a couple of pitchers of beer. Joe pours a glass for each of us, using the inside of the glass to avoid getting too much foam. On a shelf above the room are all different books of reading today. Words. On a shelf above the room are all different kinds of hats that have the tavern logo on them. I find a bucket that has a fox embroidered on the front. We sit at our table and drink our beers. It's Friday night and the bar is full of locals, everyone eating, drinking, chatting and laughing. Larson talks about trivia night in another local bar. She and Joe participate on a team each week. This is also a surprise to me, since Larson wasn't very social when we were in college, and seeing her joy at being part of an active social scene in this community is fun for the rest of us. Joe is most likely the instigator in getting them involved. Larson talks enthusiastically about how their trivia team members have complementary skills, saying that she is always the go-to person for anything related to literature or history. Her brother, Tom, answers the sports questions, and others on the team cover movies and other categories. That's fun. And that's the end of chapter 10. Short and sweet. Love it. I can't say I have ever been on or have been invited to be on a trivia team. And I'm not shocked. Unless it's about certain types of movies. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Thank you for the shout out. You're absolutely welcome. Absolutely. Let's see. Oh, we have less than a minute for Stream Raiders, so that's perfect timing. Fantastic. Let me real quick switch over. Okay. How about British slang? You would rock at that. Yeah, I don't think that's going to take up much of a category, though. Christy, I assume you saw the videos that Maggie and I did for the kind of the word crossovers from American to English. American to British, I would say. Those were fun to do. There's quite a few people that got a kick out of those. Yes, I love them. I watch British crime procedurals, so I did pretty well too. Nice. Looks like the capture window on Stream Raiders needs a little resizing. Yeah, it is chopping off a little bit, but I wanted to get the main battle in view, kind of what you're seeing here, so I wasn't too concerned about the chopping. Alright. I don't have any spells yet because I haven't unlocked them, but I don't think we'll need it. There's only 3 enemies, so here we go. And it auto-zooms anyway, as you can see. Ugh. There we go. Short and sweet. Excellent. And Waffles gets the tank scrolls, and everyone gets some gold. I feel like I just missed something, because I did. What did I just miss? RNL, gifting a sub to Goriki. Thank you so much for doing that. 2 months. 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 2 months That was very kind of you. Thank you so much. That was very sweet of you. Alright. And again, RNL, stop it. You're too kind. Thank you so much. Savage, enjoy the sub and the few emotes that I have available. Same to you, Gariki. Thank you so much, RNL. That's seriously, that's great. It really is. And I cannot unlock any captain spells yet, so that's fine. We don't really need them. I'm starting up the next battle. I'm just doing it off screen real quick. I'm gonna go with archers again. Alright, the battle is ready. Have fun with the battle. Thank you so much. A battle hype. And there's a Pokemon in chat. A wild gloom. I have no idea what the gloom looks like or is, but I'm going to throw a Pokeball at it anyway. I gotta tell you, I love this community. The people that I've been meeting through, yeah, there you go, through Twitch and through the Discords and whatnot, it's been amazing. I feel so blessed to be able to do this. It is definitely a big hobby of mine. I love it. And again, just throwing that link out there for those that want to check out the book. We're going to get right into chapter 11. 1969 to 1970. Junior year, second semester. We're just moving on through the college life. Getting snippets of all the fun as we go along. It's great. Good night, gotta run. No problem, Hicks. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. And wherever we leave off tonight, we'll be picking up tomorrow anyway. Usual time, 2 p.m. Central. So, and the VOD will be available at some point as soon as it uploads, once I'm done. So, off to the store myself. Hey, while you're there, buy me some candy, will you? As long as it's not peanut butter, because unfortunately I don't like peanut butter. But, you know, just grab something, throw it my way. Appreciate it. Wow. Wow, indeed. Bubble. Get into Stream Raiders, Bubble. I just became a captain. You know what that's like. There you go. Japan's not big on peanut butter or anything. Oh, well, I would fit right in, let me tell you. Oh, and actually, before I forget, Bubble is a really fun streamer. He uses Dixper. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I will say this much. It allows you to mess with the streamer as they're playing a game, and it's quite hilarious. So, when you get a chance, go check out Bubble. Give him a follow. Hate you, Atkinson. Yeah, you don't hate me. You don't hate me. Come on. You love it. Alright. Let's see. Chapter 11, Junior Year, second semester. The house we lived in had a front porch with a swing big enough to seat 3 people, and we spent a lot of time hanging out there when it was nice out. 3 of us sat together in the swing, and the rest of us took turns sitting on the floor. One Sunday night, after Dryce and Iverson had gone home for the weekend, Larson, Sutton, and I were sitting out there talking about the movie Psycho. The more we talked, the scarier it got. Of course it was dark in the house by this time too, and we were in quite a tizzy going up the creaky stairs to our apartment. The stairwell had just a single light bulb in the ceiling, about halfway up to our apartment, so it was spooky. It was a spooky scene until we got all the lights turned on in our dark apartment upstairs. We decided to take some fudge to make ourselves feel better. Any excuse to take fudge is a good idea. The chore list we kept on the refrigerator was very detailed. In addition to cooking and clean-up duties, we took turns taking out the trash, vacuuming the living room. Did we dust? I can't remember. And washing the kitchen floor. Sutton was an early riser. One night she said she had to turn in because she had to hit the floor with the birds. This phrase particularly amused me, so I pantomimed holding a bird and hitting it on the floor. That's funny. This sent Larson and me into a spasm of laughter. It was one of those times when something sets you off, but it's not the least bit funny to anyone else in the room, which of course makes you laugh that much harder. That's kind of funny. Every time Larson and I tried to start talking, it would set us off again, until we were finally worn out. I love those moments, okay? Those are amazing moments, and they're needed. They're absolutely needed. We didn't have a car the first year we lived off campus, so we pulled a red Flyer wagon the 10 blocks to the Piggly Wiggly grocery store each week. I have shopped in a Piggly Wiggly, just pointing that out. The grocery boys used to fight over who got to load the wagon. I suppose they didn't want to see the 5 college girls shopping together all that often. We pulled the wagon back and forth to the store, rain or shine, snow or sleet, uphill both ways. We had to lift the wagon onto the porch, and then we'd each carry a bag of groceries up the stairs. We didn't drink coffee very often, so it was a special treat when Larson made egg coffee. Egg coffee? I feel like that needs more of an explanation. Oh, and we're going to get one. She mixed a raw egg with the coffee grounds and dumped the mixture into boiling water. The egg and grounds sank to the bottom, or floated to the top, and the remaining purified coffee was superb. Interesting. Church ladies used to make this coffee in large white enamel pots that could simmer on the stove all day without burning or getting bitter. We all came from lower middle class families, so we knew how to be frugal. Each of us put in the $5 a week for our groceries. That covered cereal, milk, and juice for breakfast, sandwiches and chips for lunch, and a rotation menu of casseroles on weeknights. Wow, can you imagine being able to do that now? That'd be amazing. Some of the casseroles, such as tater tot hot dish, became family favorites after we graduated. In May of our junior year, Larson, Sutton, Dryce, Fellows, and I gathered in the living room of our apartment, wearing dresses and pantyhose, a relatively rare occurrence except for going to church on Sunday. We would be leaving soon for Fellows' junior piano recital, and we're all so proud of her. Iverson came up the stairs holding the corsage of pink roses that we had chipped in to buy for Fellows. Fellows had splurged and had her hair done for the occasion, and was wearing a turquoise pantsuit. It was too hard to work the piano pedals in a dress. Fellows cried when she saw the flowers, and we all joined in. The anticipation was killing us, not just because we were excited to see her play, but because we knew her parents had driven 700 miles to surprise her, and had managed to keep the fact that they were coming secret for several weeks after they told us. I'm terrible at keeping secrets like that. Don't tell me. I have a story about that. Remind me later. As we walked together to the recital hall, all of us except Follows were grinning at each other, knowing this secret. When she went backstage, the rest of us positioned ourselves at the doors to hand out programs. Fellows' parents, sisters, and brother arrived just before the concert started, to be sure she wouldn't see them ahead of time. We sat in the row in front of them to try and block her vision in case she could see the audience. Smart. She played flawlessly and made it look easy. We all knew the hours it took to make it look that way. Fellows headed to the practice hall after dinner every night when we headed to the library. After the concert, we gathered by the stage door with her family so we could see her reaction when she saw them. There was much screaming, crying, and hugging on her part, theirs and ours. But we kept it short, as there was a long line of well-wishers who wanted to congratulate Fellows on a job well done. Fellows told us many years later that partway through the recital she thought she saw her dad sitting in the back, but decided she just must be wishing it were so. Just before school dismissed for the summer, news of the Kent State riots, or massacre depending on your point of view, began to spread across the country. In addition to the daily Vietnam body count that appeared on the nightly news, we saw footage of the horrifying event of that day. Film of students, National Guardsmen ran all weekend on the news. National Guard in riot gear and shields with face masks to protect them from tear gas. The students ran for cover to try and escape the tear gas canisters, and the guardsmen tried to push the students out of the courtyard. Larson came to Golden Valley for the weekend after school was out so we could go to the Peter, Paul, and Mary concert at Orchestra Hall. We had sung many of their songs in our evening relaxation time after dinner and before studying, and were especially looking forward to their message of peace and non-violence. We drove my mom's Mustang convertible to downtown Minneapolis and parked a few blocks from the auditorium. I had been working in East Minneapolis, so I was used to driving in Twin Cities traffic, but it was still a bit of an adventure to be parking downtown on my own. The auditorium was packed, and most of the audience looked like us, college-age kids in jeans and t-shirts, a few with bandanas around their heads and peace beads around their necks. Peter, Paul, and Mary started the set with a few favorites. Puff the Magic Dragon, Michael Row the Boat Ashore, Lemon Tree. After the intermission, we all joined in when they sang, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? The audience stood and clapped to the beat as they joined in to sing, If I Had a Hammer, and no, I'm not going to sing this. I'd hammer in the morning. I'd hammer in the evening all over this land. I'd hammer out justice. I'd hammer out freedom. I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. No singing tonight, sorry. Tears were streaming down our cheeks by then, and we didn't want the concert to end. They did a couple of encores, and Larson and I linked arms as we left the auditorium, not saying anything. It's amazing how music can move people, right? And just do something inside of you. It's awesome. A few days after the concert, my mom became ill and was admitted to the hospital. She was diagnosed with a rare, untreatable blood disorder and died 3 weeks later after a difficult search for a diagnosis. When I called to tell my friends the news, Dryce and Iverson said they would come for the funeral. Larson and Sutton couldn't get away from their summer jobs, and it was too far for Fellows to travel. The funeral home had 3 smaller rooms facing a larger room in the middle, where my mom's open casket was sitting. I could see my friends sitting together in one of the smaller rooms. My friends had called about once a week, but this was the first time I'd actually seen them. One by one, they caught my eye and nodded. We didn't have time to talk before the funeral started. Organ music played in the background. Nearer, my God, to Thee. If I hadn't already been crying, that hymn certainly would have loosened the floodgates. After the funeral, we all went downstairs for a light lunch. Not that any of us felt like eating, but we went through the motions. While my brother, sister-in-law, dad and aunts and uncles had lost loved ones before, This was a completely new experience for me. My friends had never gone through anything like this either, and it was hard for us to think of something to say. "How are you doing?" was about the most we could muster. Still, having someone there who wasn't immediate family was comforting, and allowed me to think about life outside the hospital room or funeral home, if only for a moment. Yeah. I remember when I got called because my mother had passed away a few years ago. That was tough. That was very tough. Okay. We have time for one, maybe two more chapters. Then we'll do the last Stream Raiders, and then we will call it a night for today. And then we'll get back into it tomorrow. So the next chapter, chapter 12, is a time from 2014, Cove Point Lodge, Beaver Bay, Minnesota. And we have a picture here. Thank you, Rio. Appreciate that. Let's see if I can... There we go, kind of. That's a fantastic view. Looks like somewhere I would want to go. And it's a reminder, what's the story about keeping secrets, or rather not? Oh, right. Thank you. Have a good stream, Cutie. We'll be back tomorrow, story time. Thank you. So, yes, quick intermission. When I first started the job that I have now, which was 9-10 years ago, you can tell after the chapter, please. Oh, sure. Yeah, I can read the next couple of chapters and then read it, or tell you the story right at the very end if you wish. That's fine. It's funny for me. Because I can't keep secrets for nothing. Alright, yeah, let's read this chapter. It's a good idea. Cove Point Lodge, Beaver Bay, Minnesota. Our condo on Lake Superior is one row back from the Great Lake. It's owned by one of our Concordia classmates, but she isn't there this weekend. Or isn't here this weekend. The condo has 2 bedrooms downstairs and a third in a loft off the great room. Larsa and I decide to take that one. A few weeks before, Sutton asked us all what our favorite colors were, but she wouldn't say why. Now, shortly after our arrival, she presents each of us with a drinking glass hand-painted with polka dots in our favorite color, created by her daughter, Carrie. K-A-R-I. This calls for a toast, so we break out the first bottle of wine. And if you say first, that means there are more. Even though we aren't directly on the lake, we can see it from the deck at the front of the condo. One morning, we see a barge in the distance and think about how, if it keeps going, traveling to the edge of Lake Superior and continuing along the other Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River, it will make it all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Later that evening, we watch a storm move towards us from the west, gathering steam as it goes and giving us an intense but short downpour before moving on. Our destination on the first day is Split Rock Lighthouse, built after a storm in 1905. Built after a storm in 1905, wrecked 29 ships. Wow. 6 of them within a dozen miles of Split Rock River. Our first stop is the viewing area on the shore of the lake that looks across the inlet. This is more challenging than it sounds. To get to the lakeshore, we have to walk down a wooden staircase with about 80 steps. Then take a 90-degree left turn and walk 30 more steps. Then, to get the best view, we climb over several large, fairly slippery rocks. Once we're at the shore, The view is spectacular. Across the water, the white lighthouse sits atop a rock cliff 130 feet high. We each take a few photos and then pose in groups of 3 with the lake and the lighthouse in the background. When we head back up the steps, Larson tells us that running up the steps will be easier on our knees than walking. I mutter an expletive in disagreement, much to the delight of Dryce and fellows who are within earshot, unbeknownst to me. Larson bounds up the steps, and the rest of us proceed at a more leisurely pace, stopping at the landing halfway up to catch our breath. And I'm right there with you. I'm not even sure I'd make it to the halfway part. We get in the car and drive to the lighthouse. The lighthouse is every bit as beautiful and interesting as we had hoped. A park staff member dressed like an historic lighthouse keeper tells us how the lighthouse guided ships around the rocky coastline. There's a small winding staircase up to the top of the lighthouse that only has room for 1 person at a time. We take turns going up, alternating with people coming down, until we are all at the landing at the top. The landing is about 4 feet wide with a simple waist-high railing. It's worth the trip to see the 360-degree view, blue water and blue skies, trees and rocks along the shore. But I'm glad we were back on the ground. Our next outing is to the town of Two Harbors, which is south of us on the shore of Lake Superior. We decide to walk out along the break wall that divides the 2 sides of the harbor. The walkway on top of the breakwall is about 5 feet wide, with sloping rock walls that descend into the water on either side. The waves splash almost to the top of the breakwall, and we have to be careful not to slip. Larson's vision problems make it difficult for her to see where she's walking, or very far ahead, so she grabs my hand for support. We joke that if we go over the edge, at least we'll go together. And I lost my place. That's funny. Oh, there we go. The pier goes out about half a mile with a 90-degree turn at the halfway point. At the end of the second leg is a smaller marker with a bell that warns oncoming boats that they are getting close. We arrive at the end of the pier and rest on a bench at the base of the bell. It's pretty chilly with the breeze blowing off the water, and we're all glad that we wore jackets. The bell rings more or less steadily in the stiff breeze. Across the bay on the other side are 2 huge docks for ore barges. They're empty today, but it's still interesting to imagine how a barge would get into the bay and dock at one of the mammoth structures. At one time, Two Harbors held the record for the fastest loading of an ore barge. The glory days of the Iron Range in northern Minnesota passed in the mid-1980s, but there are still barges stopping and docking here to load taconite, a lower-grade rock that contains about 15% iron. On the other side of the bay is a round lighthouse. We stop over there on our way back to the condo and see Edna G., a little tugboat that is famous for having pulled 6 ships to safety during a big storm. The inside of the lighthouse has a nice gift shop. Larson and Sutton buy little ornaments that they'll use in building one of their fairy gardens, a hobby the 2 of them had shared since they took a class together at a greenhouse in Detroit Lakes. Each of them buys a miniature lighthouse and a tugboat, and Larson buys a little birch bark canoe with a pine tree. When they get home, they'll add these treasures to a terrarium with live plants to create a scene that reminds them of their trip to North Shore. On the way back to our condo at Cove Point Lodge, we stop at the entrance of the lodge to take pictures of us sitting in the giant white Adirondack chair that marks the entrance to the resort. The outsized chair rests on top of a small hill in a grassy area surrounded by pine trees, about 20 yards off the road. We pull off to the side of the road and hike up the hill to the chair. The seat comes to about eye level and holds 3 of us at a time. We climb up onto the seat in 2 groups of 3 using steps in front. When we're situated, the back of the chair extends about 5 feet over our heads. We do our best to position our feet as Edith Ann would have done on the laugh-in, and try to outdo each other with a "and that's the truth" poofed impressions. Getting down from the chair turns out to be easier than getting into it, as we don't have to maneuver around each other as we did getting into the chair. Those of us who do Facebook post photos that night enjoy the reactions we get from other friends. That sounds like a fun trip. I think I would have enjoyed that. Absolutely. Alright. I think we can get in one more chapter. Stream Raiders. And then we'll call it a day. Or a night, I mean. Clap, clap, clap. Thank you very much. Just take another quick sip. Can't believe I've drank all this already. Well, I can, but anyway. Let's see what we got. Chapter 13, 1970 to 1971. Senior year, first semester. Can't believe we're almost graduating college. Just kidding. That's my terrible jokes for the evening. A few weeks later, right before I would head back to Concordia for my senior year, my dad and I received word that my brother Brad would be going to Korea for a year. Not Vietnam. This was the first good news we had received in a long time. Brad's wife Beth was pregnant, and he would have to leave before the baby was born. He would be gone for a year. Still, to know that he was not going to Vietnam was a big relief. In late August, as I started thinking about going back to Concordia for the school year, my dad told me that he wanted to transfer the title of my mom's green Mustang convertible to me, so I could take it back to school with me. I'd been driving it all summer and thought he might be thinking of doing this, but I still cried to think that she wouldn't be driving it anymore. I also cried because I would be leaving my dad alone. Brad was in Korea. My sister-in-law was in Northbrook, Illinois, with her parents awaiting the baby's birth, and I would be in Moorhead, 300 miles away. As we packed the car, both of us spent most of the weekend crying. We didn't talk much about how we felt. Martinsons didn't really do that. But we both knew that the next year would be rough for all of us. The Mustang was packed to the roof with clothes, vinyl records, a small bookcase that I had acquired over the summer, and a few odds and ends for the kitchen in our apartment. The black leather seats got very hot in the summer, so I put a towel over the driver's side so I wouldn't burn my butt getting in. Smart. As I pulled out of the driveway, I waved goodbye out the window and turned up the radio to listen to the Twins game on my way north to Moorhead. I was the first one to arrive to the apartment. I was too pooped to unpack right away, so I went upstairs and opened all the windows to let in some fresh air. We didn't have air conditioning, so I turned on some fans to circulate the hot air. Dryce and Iverson arrived a couple of hours later, and after their parents left, I finished unpacking. We decided to make a grocery run. This time in the Mustang instead of with the Red Wagon. We wondered whether the guys in the grocery store would be as interested in helping us now. About 6 weeks after the start of the school year, I received a call from my sister-in-law telling me that Sarah Beth had been born. Everyone was doing fine. Beth had been able to talk to my brother through a ham operator to give him the news. After a few tries of communicating through ham operators, Beth and Brad decided to abandon it. They had spent most of the time either crying or waiting for what they said to travel the airwaves and get to the other person. Then, waiting several long minutes to hear what the other person said. A few weeks after Sarah's birth, I met my dad in Brainerd, and we flew to Chicago for her baptism. It was exciting to see the new baby and my sister-in-law, but it was difficult to say goodbye to my dad again when I went back to school the next week. A couple of weeks after I returned from Chicago, the 6 of us friends attended a July Collins concert on campus. We were especially excited to be doing something for fun and uplifting in the midst of the news about the war and our unplanned divorce from the Beta Taus. Every day we watched the evening news with the body count superimposed and footage from the jungle of Vietnam, with machine gun fire in the background. The news was very difficult to watch, but impossible to ignore, just in case there was something positive that happened that day. One of our Beta Tau friends had graduated in May and used up his student deferment, so he would be heading to Vietnam in a couple of weeks. Later, we often wondered whether the rest of the Beta Taus would have behaved so badly if John had been there to talk them out of it. The Judy Collins concert took place in Memorial Auditorium, which is mostly a gymnasium except for rows of hard wooden seats on one side. They set up chairs on the gym floor for events like this. We couldn't afford main floor tickets, so we ended up sitting almost all the way at the top row of the cheaper seats. After a nondescript warm-up act, Judy came on stage to thunderous applause. She was wearing a flowing white dress and carried her guitar by its neck as she strolled to the middle of the stage. With the single spotlight fixed on her as she moved to the center stage, she looked like an angel. She sounded like one too as she began to sing. Bows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in air, and feather crayons everywhere. I've looked at the clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at the clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow. It's clouds' illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. We wore out our hands clapping while trying not to drown out our singing, tears rolling down our cheeks. Tears and fears are feeling proud to say, I love you, right out loud. Schemes and dreams and circus crowds, I've looked at life that way. But now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads. They say, I've changed. But something's lost. But something's gained in living every day. Some people sang along. Singing along seemed sacrilegious to me. Plus, I couldn't hit some of the high notes to save me, so I just listened. The guitar accompaniment was simple and powerful. Seeing her on that stage, one person, one guitar, under a single spotlight in the middle of an otherwise dark auditorium, transported us. She sang of lost love, but of the six of us had not yet experienced lost love, but we could still imagine what it might be like as we listened to the beautiful words, melody, and her simple guitar accompaniment. It's a lesson too late for the learning. Made of sand, made of sand. In the wink of an eye my soul is turning, in your hand, in your hand. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Will there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to be unkind. Don't you know that was the last thing on my mind? Karen, I loved her, and true love lasts a lifetime. Joni Mitchell is the woman who taught her Gold Digger's life how to feel love, actually. We filed out of the auditorium quietly, feeling uplifted, at least for a while. When we got back to the apartment, we listened to two of Judy's albums several times and wished the concert had continued for a few more hours. A little later that semester, Prexy Joe, Concordia's president, took the podium one morning at chapel. Prexy Joe didn't speak at chapel very often, so when he came to the podium, we wondered what was up. He was tall, though a little stooped over, and had a very stern hellfire and damnation look about him, a far cry from the smiling copper salute of him that would later stand in the middle of campus. I almost skipped a line. Once the statue had been installed, Concordia students gave him the nickname Chocolate Joe. They have no idea what he was like back in the late 60s. From the podium, Prexy Joe announced that after careful consideration, he had decided to close down the Concordian, our student newspaper, because they had printed something that was not consistent with Concordia's Christian values. This was in December of 1970, during the height of the Vietnam War, and we all assumed it had something to do with the paper's editor's anti-war rhetoric, which did not sit well with the college leaders and donors. The offending piece, however, turned out to be a small ad on the inside page with a phone number for a New York abortion clinic. Abortions were illegal at the time. Larsa and I went back to the apartment after chapel because we didn't have class until later. We were shocked at the gall of the college president who would do such a thing. We had both become pretty liberal politically during our time at Concordia, and knew that this action would send shock waves throughout the campus for months, if not years to come. There had been riots on the campus to protest the war and rage against the machine. Not likely a scenario in Moorhead, but still a very unsettling time. The student newspaper's advisor, one of my favorite professors, quit his teaching position abruptly over the shutdown, and there were discussions among pockets of students about taking a similar stand. It would be a big risk, especially for the guys, because college deferments from the draft were still allowed, and quitting might mean getting conscripted to fight in a war that many did not support. Although Concordia's campus was sheltered from the outside world in many ways, the politics of the time intruded at unexpected times. I vividly recall sitting in one of my English classes when a deafening sound rattled the windows. Everyone else in the room pretty much ignored it, except perhaps for taking furtive glances at the windows to be sure that windows wouldn't burst into a million tiny pieces. I pretended not to notice, though I really wanted to run from the room to a bomb shelter. Intellectually, I knew that a bomb shelter would not do good in the event of a nuclear attack. Bend over and kiss your ass goodbye was about all you could do. The sound most likely came from aircraft from the Grand Forks Air Force Base, located 80 miles northwest of Concordia. The base was part of the Strategic Air Command System. Those words make my palms sweat. According to a family member who was stationed in Grand Forks around that time, the northern tier bases were primarily there to refuel the B-52 bombers and KC-135 tankers, as well as to intercept rogue or hostile aircraft coming over the pole with targets in the U.S. They were tied to the defense early warning line that stretched across Canada and the U.S. The air raid warnings that were conducted monthly were almost as terrifying as the occasional, and much more unpredictable, sonic boom. And that takes us to the end of that chapter. I can only imagine what that must have been like. With everything, I mean, it's impossible for me to put my mind in the position of what yours would have been, Christy, during that war. But to just try and live life, normal, so to speak, knowing that people you knew were just being drafted left, right, and center, that must have been kind of tough, honestly. I can't even imagine. All war is dumb, but that one in particular. Yeah, I don't see many things good coming out of war, that's for sure. Alright. Let's, real quick, do our stream raiders, and then I will tell my embarrassing story. Alright. Start battle. 3, 2, 1. Fight. Wow, this will be quick. And done. Open the chest. Renell. You're killing me. Thank you so much for doing that. 25 gold to Rio. Paladin scroll. Stop it. young lady, I'm telling you right now. Thank you so much for gifting all those subs today. We're gonna have a talk later, okay? Charge, fellow raiders. Kerber, Warlock, and Akari also deserve subs for joining this battle. In my heart, you have them. That was very kind of you. Thank you very much. Very, very much. Okay, so let me tell you my embarrassing, non-secret story. So the job I do now, I'm a project manager, senior project manager, and not long after I had started, it was coming up on an anniversary for my wife and I was going to a show, like a conference, if you will, in Florida. And I was like, hey, we have some money saved up. I'm gonna do the cool thing and bring my wife out so that I can do the conference, and then we can spend like an extra week of vacation time as a celebration of our anniversary. I'm like, cool, this will be great. So I told my wife, I call her on the phone, I was like, hey, this date, I've already cleared it with your work, don't worry about it. Take this time off and pack. Where are we going? What are we doing? I kid you not, I lasted 5 minutes. 5 whole minutes. And I couldn't hold it in any longer. I was like, you're coming to Miami. I've already got your ticket. And I blew it. So, more of the story. If you need something to stay secret that's extremely exciting, don't tell me. I'm good at other secrets, like things that are personal, that, you know, have a deep impact on a personal level. Like, if you shared a diagnosis with me, for example, which is a terrible place to go to in my head, but if that were the case, that I can keep a secret until I'm in the grave. But something that's fun and exciting, I suck at it. Okay, so there you go. Tella Atkinson, there you go. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me in this bonus stream. I've had an absolute blast getting to read to you tonight and talk, and you know, seeing a few new faces in here, which is fantastic. I love it. Rin, hi. Hello, you're just in time to see me leave. But I'm glad you're here. We've had extra follows, and RNL, you've been gifting subs like it's Christmas, and I can't thank you enough. I really can't. That means so much to me. One more time, in case anyone wants to take a look. You've been looking for a while. Sneaky, I get it. If anyone wants to take a look at that book that I'm looking at, or reading from, I should say, feel free to do so. If you haven't found your way to my Discord and you want to add another Discord to your long line of Discords, which I totally understand if you don't want to, you can do that there. Once you're in there, I will be posting. I never promote myself, but since you're the only other reader on Twitch I know and have been on this search. Yeah, David is also a reader on Twitch. And so is RNL. And so is Garuki. So we are a tight community. We are a small community. But that is why the USG has formed, that Aaron and I started. So there's a bunch of USG members there. David shared his times as well. Go check him out. Please connect with each other. This is a time to network and get to know each other, and since we are all like-minded in what we're trying to achieve, it can't hurt. It really can't. So again, thank you so much for sticking around, for listening to me stumble upon words, for enjoying the stories, both funny and saddening. They are real. from a real person. Christy, thank you again for allowing me to read this. It's been an honor, and I'm loving it so far, and I can't wait to get back into it tomorrow. It's sad to say that we're not that far off. If we don't finish it tomorrow, it'll be the next day, or the next time. So, yes. So thank you to all of you. I hope to see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll be doing Stream Raiders again, of course, because we just started tonight, so we got to keep that going. It's been an honor for me as well. Thank you. The thanks are all mine. They really are. And yes, so take care of each other. Have an amazing night. And thank you. I'm going to go to my ending screen, and then I'm going to find somebody for us to go say hello to. So bear with me just a moment while my computer catches up with what I'm trying to do. And let's see if we have anyone on right now that we can go say hi to. I'm specifically looking for USG folks. I don't see any USG folks, so we're gonna go over to Sea of Thieves. There's a new friend I've made, Ash, rest assured. She's funny, she's hilarious. I love her to pieces. Let's go pop over to her. Okay. Good night to you, RNL, as well. Here's the... Wow, I completely messed that up. That's the raid message. And if you know who I'm talking about and you're subbed already, and I can't type, jeez, type as well as I read. There's the sub raid message. And now I will type in the actual raid. There we go. Okay. I can do things, it's fine. We're good. Thank you again. Stick around for the raid, get some extra points, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
We should probably anchor with the storm coming.
Welcome. Hello, hello. How was your stream? Thank you so much for the raid. Hello, raiders. Welcome, welcome.
Aria.
From Atkinson, already a big fan. Oh, thank you so much, David. I appreciate that. Welcome. How you guys doing today? How did your stream go, Atkinson? Arlen, hello. Arlen L. Quindy. Hopefully I said that correctly. I apologize if I did not. Welcome, welcome, raiders. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ash. I'm a variety streamer.